if you're looking for that clarity on how you need to position yourself as a fractional executive in today's market, this episode is for you. Welcome to the Fractional Pros. He's Dean. I'm Atiba. We are the Fractional Pros. And if you are someone who is a fractional executive, or you're on that fence of being a little bit curious, you're in the right place. You know, Dean, after talking to dozens and dozens of people who are entering or in the fractional community, one of the things that I've seen, and I know you've seen it too, is people are confused and they don't know how to view themselves. Like, they don't know where they fit and what their role is and where they need to be. And so let's talk about that today. What do you think?
I love it. Let's do it. There's a lot of confusion out there. Let's create some clarity for our audience.
So, Dean, let's talk about it. Let's talk about those people who we've seen, and we know a lot of fractionals are coming from corporate into the fractional space. And then we have a lot of consultants who are coming to the fractional space. So let's talk about those two different groups and how their mindsets are different and how they need to approach looking at being fractional.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Let's do it. There's those two unique groups come from a different perspective, right? And I think that's what we're going to get into, is shaping their perspective and helping them understand how to make that transition, right? We don't have to sell the value of fractional. I think our audience knows the benefits of being a fractional. They just don't all know how to be a fractional. So let's start with the corporate sort of escapees, if you will. Those people that have come from this corporate career, maybe 10, 20, 30 years of being in a particular leadership role. They have all of the expertise, but they don't have the experience of being a fractional. So I think the first two or three things that come to mind is you go from this very structured, very predictable environment to, holy cow, I'm out on my own. Regardless of whether they're a fractional or not, they're starting their business. They're a solopreneur. They're an entrepreneur. They're out on their own. They're like, all right, I don't have the daily calendar. I don't have an assistant putting stuff on my calendar, telling me where to go and what to do. It's all on me, right? And I think that lack of structure can be shocking to people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a place to start maybe the conversation today. Is how do you go about managing that? What do you do? As you kind of built your business, you create a lot of structure, a lot of systems and processes in your business. That's what makes up business a business, right? What was your take on it?
And I think that's it. I think that's it right there, right? Is understanding first, if you're going from corporate into being a fractional and being on your own, it is a business. And so when you look back at your corporate environment, there were different departments, weren't there? Okay, so let's say you were the fractional, you were the CFO of this organization, but there was also a marketing department. There was also a sales department. There was also a fulfillment department, right? And there were other executives. And so now you have to recognize that you are playing all of those roles, and you have to give time to all of those roles, not just yours. So I think that for me is the first step there is that level of recognition that I've got to allocate pieces of me to doing these things. And in a lot of cases, even learning some of these things.
Yep. I think that's an interesting point, because now you're head of marketing, you're head of sales, you're head of HR, you're head of all of these things. And I think one of the things that I learned early on was being intentional and purposeful in the things I do every day, right? I don't have to worry about HR if I'm the only person in my business right now. I need to make sure my ducks are in a row and I've got an LLC and all of those things. But not a high priority, right? I've got nobody HR. I don't have to HR anybody, right? It's just me.
Right.
But early on, what's our number one thing is to find a client, get paid, exchange value, right? Knowledge for income. So marketing, sales, defining how I'm going to deliver my services. That's where new fractionals need to spend their time, right? So that would be my first recommendation for our audience, to your point, is marketing. What is working
Yeah.
to attract ideal clients for our fractional business. I would start there because without a client, we don't have a business.
Well, okay, so now let's talk about that though for a moment there, because especially if you're coming from corporate and this is your first time bringing in clients, you use a term there and then you made a statement. You said ideal clients, and then you said if I don't have clients, I don't have a business. Are there differences between clients?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say, I will predict, I will look in my crystal ball and say, everybody in this audience will work with someone who isn't an ideal client. They will be like, yeah, I chased the money there. They asked if I could do a thing. That thing isn't my core competency. And I said I could do it. And I did it. Wasn't fun. Wasn't fun, right?
Mhm.
Not what I want to keep doing. So I think we all have to go through that experience, honestly, to really understand what an ideal client is to us. There's the mechanics of it, and you're an expert in helping people figure out that piece.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we have to experience working with people because I think there's this sort of psychographics component,
Yep.
human component to working with people, people working with people, right?
Yep.
And I think that's an important part of ICP. And we all go through the process of like, oh man, I said yes. Hindsight 2020 shouldn't have said yes
So
to
this
that.
is a yes.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. And I think we can spend some more time talking about defining ICP and all
Mhm.
of those things. I
We'll
think
do
it's
that in a different video because that's a
yeah.
whole thing.
But I
Yeah.
think the message is clear, right? Like be careful what you say yes to, what you commit to. And that includes networking groups that aren't going to produce, results. It can include masterminds, it can include whatever it is. When you have an open calendar, all you do is say yes to stuff. But what better time than at the beginning to define where you need to be and what you need to be doing? And I'm a big believer. I don't know if you function this way, Atiba, but I'm a time blocker,
Mm.
right? So I block time for particular things, internal and external, because I get so busy on a given day that 8 hours, 10 hours can go by
Flat.
like that. So I
Yeah.
block time. So I'm a big believer, especially on day one of starting a new business, block time for, I'd say, business development. Let's put it in a big bucket. Business development has to take priority because you got no time to do, you got nothing else on your calendar.
Right.
But that ratio of business development time versus other things will shift as you do, as you see results and see success.
Yeah, yeah, and we should talk about this too on another video. And matter of fact, y'all, let us know in the comments if this is a topic that you want us to cover in another video. Because Dean, you just brought that up. In business development, the marketing and the sales, bringing new customers in and finding those ideal customers and bring them in. One of the big problems that I know we've heard from a lot of fractional executives is, "Hey, I landed a client." And we got started, but then I didn't have time to keep doing more business development because then I was busy doing the work of the client. And then when my time with that client ran out, then I had nothing. And I go from feast to famine. So if that's a topic that y'all want us to cover, drop it in the comments, feast to famine, and we'll do another video on that for y'all too. Okay. So so we're going from corp to fractional, right? And we've talked about that. We've talked about some of that mindset shift there. One of the things that I know that you talk about a lot that for me is great about going from corp to fractional is you have the expertise, right?
Yeah.
But imposter syndrome starts to set in and say, but I don't have the experience. So tell us about that. Like, how does that fit?
Yeah. I love this topic because I think that most of what holds us back in life is the stuff between our ears, right? How we think, how we perceive others, how we think others perceive us, all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
so I work with fractionals in my community, and these people have amazingly successful corporate careers 20, 30 years. I mean, Fortune 200. I mean, these guys are gals are amazing. But at the beginning, that imposter syndrome kicks in because they say, I have the skills, but I've never done it as a fractional. I've never been that business advisor. And that doubt creeps in and it comes out in their marketing and when they're talking to prospects and they don't win deals. So I break it down like this, and you use the two terms I use as well. So expertise versus experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not talking about corporate experience. I'm talking about experience as a fractional. So let's talk about expertise. These people are subject matter experts. They have decades of expertise. They are amazing at solving the problem in corporate. They've just never done it on their own for clients. So they lack the experience as a fractional. So I have them break it out, break those two things separately. And when you're out in the marketplace and you're talking about who you are, the problem you solve, how you want to be known, rely on your decades of expertise and the problems you've solved in corporate. And it doesn't matter the environment you solved it in. You just speak to those problems. You speak to the process you took somebody through to solve the problem. Lean on your expertise. That will give you confidence. That will give you confidence that you are the right person to solve for your prospect. Your
Yeah.
experience as a fractional is a natural result of landing a client and moving forward in your career. Once you've landed one client, then you can also say, I've got experience as a fractional. You just don't bring that up. Honestly, that's the easiest thing is just don't bring it up. When you talk to a prospect, just talk about your expertise
Right.
and the things you have done. Your experience as a fractional will come over time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And I actually look at it in a slightly different way, but complementary. Okay. And it's that the same wind blows on every single business.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you haven't been a fractional, right? You know that the business challenges that your client is having, you faced them and you solved them when you were a corporate executive. And because you faced them when you were a corporate executive, it's the same challenges that this business is having. So you know how to solve them.
Yeah. Yeah. I would actually say that you were probably an executive in a bigger business than that
Yes.
you would be a fractional executive. The businesses that hire fractional executives tend to be a little smaller because
Yep.
they're not ready for or can't afford the full time. So
Yep.
you've solved bigger problems for bigger businesses. So solving for that smaller business is actually easier.
Easier.
So you're way ahead of the curve and you lean into that when you talk to your prospects, then you don't have to worry about your experience as a fractional. You've got it.
Exactly.
You've got it.
Exactly. Exactly. So that frames really well going from corporate to fractional.
Yep.
Now, for my friends, our friends, the consultants of the world, who have been out for a decade, 5 years, 15 years, pounding the pavement. They've won contracts, won projects, gone in, done the project, and then off to the next project. Heck, even gone in, had to deal with people who didn't like the consultants because you just came in to change everything. They're now looking and saying, maybe I should become a fractional executive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How, what's the mindset shift that they have to make?
Yeah. Yeah. What you described there is what I call the revenue roller coaster, right? The ups and the downs. And one of the benefits of being a fractional is you flatten that revenue curve out, right?
Yeah.
I've been a consultant for 20 years. I've been a fractional for probably 13 or 14 years, and they work very well together with the same person in the same business. So it's not an either or, it can be an and, but it's a completely different way we approach our clients. So let's do this. Let's define what a fractional is.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into this sort of mindset shift that a consultant has to go through.
Perfect.
So you want to lead us off? Give us the fundamental pieces of what a fractional is. What's the definition?
So for a fractional executive, so the first part of that is you're an executive. Okay. So don't get hung on the fractional word just yet. You're an executive. And as an executive, a C-suite executive in a business is someone who has stake in that organization and the vision and the coming to fruition of the vision of that company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There as a C-suite executive, you're existing as a C-suite executive saying, I'm fully invested in where we're going, and making sure we get there. Now, the path may change, the tactics may change, but we know where we're going, and I'm here to do my part to get this entire organization there. And so you have a seat at the table when big, strategic, business altering decisions are being made. Your voice matters. Now, you're only fractional, which means you come in and you're there for a while. But when you're there, you're 100% there, vested there, like you've been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
That's what it means to be fractional. When you have me, you have all of me. But when I'm not here, you don't have me.
Yeah, maybe 1 day a week or whatever it may be, right?
Whatever it may be. I set the strategy, I set the vision, we check in the department, we make sure things are moving in the direction that they're supposed to be moving so that the company can hit its ultimate goal.
Yep. Yeah. So you are responsible for outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
You have a vested interest in outcomes. And that's can be fundamentally different to a consultant.
Yeah.
As a consultant for 2 decades, I would come in, I would develop a strategy or a plan. I would say, there you go, client. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions. But it was their responsibility to execute and own the outcomes.
Yes.
That does reflect on the quality of my work, but I'm not directly involved in driving the execution. And you mentioned it, Atiba. That's one of the big differences, right? Is that we don't just help develop the strategy and the vision and the plan for that area of the business we have expertise in. We're there to drive outcomes.
Yeah.
Now, and we don't do that by personally pressing all the buttons and twisting all the dials, right? As
Actually,
a CFO,
we press very few.
Very few. Very few. As a CFO, you're not responsible for entering invoices into QuickBooks, right? No. You're responsible for making sure that the financials are up to date.
Yes.
So that's the role. That's a big shift with the consultant. The consultant often is a doer, right? They're doing the thing, building the thing. As a fractional, remember, executive, to your point, the executives aren't the doers. They're the guiders. They're the mentors. They're the leadership. They're the accountability. Yes. Right. And that can be a challenging shift for a consultant. And now we can get into the weeds of scoping and how do you run a successful fractional engagement. And that is an episode for another time. Remember, we're talking about mindset here. So that's the shift. I'll add one other thing. We're seeing this concept of fractional executive expand a little bit into fractional leadership. Mm-hmm. Leadership would mean director or VP, right? Executive is the C-suite, as you mentioned, but we're seeing more and more opportunities for that sort of middle to higher level leader as a fractional too. And so I would encourage our audience, if you've got director, senior director, VP experience in corporate, you can still be a fractional. You just wouldn't call yourself a fractional executive. I encourage you to call yourself a fractional leader because there's still space for you to do this thing that you've been doing. You just would report to an executive. So gotcha. We're seeing some expansion there, which I think creates tremendous opportunity for more people in this space.
Yes. Yes. It's great because you get to bring your expertise.
Yeah.
And you get to actually have major impact. Because as a consultant, I know I existed like you as a consultant for a lot of years, right? And very often when things go right, consultant gets no credit. When things go wrong, consultant gets all the blame.
Fingers point, right? Yeah.
And we're the last one to be hired and the first one to be fired. Yeah. In everything, right? Yeah. And everything is always tenuous. Whereas when you become a fractional, you are now embedded.
Yeah, that's so important. That I got to tell you guys, that is one of the big takeaways of today, is embedded. As a consultant, you are on the outside of your client's organization. You have 1 or 2 points of contact. You're working through those people to do your thing, but you are on the outside. You never get the full story. Mm-hmm. You never know all the nuances. You don't really know where they're headed. As a fractional, you are embedded. You are in the inside. You're part of that circle, that inner circle.
Yeah.
So important. Embedded. Yeah. That's another characteristic of a fractional, is you're embedded in your client's business.
And let me tell you a story of how that shows up. So I have a client and, I'm their fractional CMO. and we're having a meeting a couple of days ago, our scheduled meeting, and we're going over some things. And um, one of the people in the meeting starts mentioning the ad campaign that they're running, and I'm like, "Excuse me,
Wait a
what are
minute.
you talking? I've never heard of this. What are you talking about?" Right now, as a consultant, you have no ability to say that. You just get dictated to. Whereas as a fractional executive, I was able to stop and say, no, if you're running a campaign, I need to know. And we need stuff in place for this. And it was, oh, yes, you're so right.
Yeah.
Versus, who are you? We don't have to listen to you.
Yeah. Well, as a fractional leader, you own the strategy and you own the execution of the strategy. So all this random stuff that they've always done will come up. And you get to come back to, does this fit into our plan?
Exactly.
You have that ability of that authority to have that conversation. And it's your responsibility to. It really is your responsibility to push pause every now and then
Yeah.
and reset.
Yeah. 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 I love that. I love that. Okay. So it's hard to make a mindset shift on your own,
Yeah.
right? Because hell, it's your own mind and you're thinking about it all on your own and you're only seeing what you're seeing. I know that one of the best places to make a mindset shift is with people who are making that mindset shift or who have already made that mindset shift. It's the old adage, right? You're like the five people you're around the most.
Yep.
Well, if the five people you're around the most have made the mindset shift, right?
Easily said, right?
Then you're going to make it too. Now, Dean, I know you have a place where people can go to make that mindset shift where they come together. People who have made it and are making it are coming together. So why don't you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah. So I made that shift from corporate to consultant a couple of decades ago. And I made that shift by adding fractional 13, 14 years ago. And it was a process. And what I realized over that part of my career is I needed a process to follow. I needed some structure. I needed some intentionality. And so I built a community around going through that experience and helping others go through that experience in a successful way. So I developed the community called the Fractional Launchpad, and it's exactly that. It's people from every kind of walk of career and life and expertise coming together to build their successful fractional careers and support each other and help each other and guide each other. And so, if you're interested in finding your tribe and getting through this process, go to fractionallaunchpad.com. You can read about what we're doing in the community and see if it makes sense. I would encourage you, whether it's my community or anything else, any other one out there, find a place where you can hang out with your people. You'll be so much more successful, especially that shift from corporate to fractional. You don't have those people around you anymore. Find your people. But go to fractionallaunchpad.com. We're launching a brand new community, a networking community called the Fractional Collective that's starting in November. So I'm here to help. The team is here to help. Reach out, hit us up on LinkedIn, drop a message below if we can support you in any way. Would love to help you.
He's Dean. I'm Atiba. We're the Fractional Pros. See you next time.
See you next time, guys.